Have you ever wondered if you could survive a zombie outbreak in New York City? It sounds like the ultimate urban survival challenge. Millions of people, endless resources, towering skyscrapers to escape to. But here's the thing, you're not getting a concrete jungle paradise, you're getting a 300 square mile death trap with 8.4 million potential zombies packed tighter than sardines in a can. There's no rescue coming from Jersey, no backup from upstate, and definitely no plot armor to save your ass. You're stuck on a series of islands surrounded by water, bridges that'll turn into parking lots of death, and tunnels that become underground tombs. Let's get real about what we're dealing with here. Every New York scenario is different. Whether you're a lifelong Bronx resident or some tourist who got caught with their pants down in Times Square, makes a huge difference. But for this analysis, I'm assuming you're already in the city when shit hits the fan. You've got maybe a day's worth of supplies, and you're rolling with a small group of 4 to 6 people. Because let's face it, going solo in New York City during the apocalypse is basically suicide with extra steps. Now, what kind of zombies are we talking about? Based on the research and what would actually be plausible in a dense urban environment like New York City, we're looking at hybrid sprinters. Think 28 Days Later meets World War Z. These aren't your grandpa's slow-walking Romero zombies. We're talking infected humans who retain some motor function, can run, climb, and swarm like angry hornets. They're driven by rage and hunger. They're attracted to noise and movement. And in a city that never sleeps, they're going to have plenty of both to work with. Now let's break down what gives you a fighting chance. Here's what most people don't realize about New York. It's not just a city, it's a vertical maze of potential safe houses. You've got over 40,000 buildings taller than 6 stories, and zombies, even the sprinter variety, are going to struggle with stairs after the first few flights. Think about it. A zombie might be able to sprint down a street, but can it maintain that energy climbing 20 flights of stairs? Probably not. The key is getting to buildings with controlled access points. Those fancy Manhattan high-rises with keycard access and security doors? They're not just keeping out the riffraff anymore, they're keeping out the undead. Get to the upper floors, destroy the stairwells behind you, and you've got yourself a fortress in the sky. Plus, rooftop access means potential helicopter rescue, signal fires, or just a good vantage point to see what fresh hell is brewing in the streets below. But here's the catch. Elevators are going to be death traps once the power grid fails, which in New York City could happen within hours of the outbreak starting. New York City is basically a giant warehouse district disguised as a metropolis. You've got over 13,000 convenience stores, thousands of pharmacies, hardware stores, and enough restaurants to feed a small country. In the early stages of the outbreak, before everything gets looted to hell, you're looking at an almost unlimited supply of food, medicine, tools, and weapons. Think about it. Every bodega has enough canned goods to keep a small group fed for weeks. Every pharmacy has antibiotics, painkillers, and first aid supplies. Hardware stores have everything from crowbars to power tools that can double as weapons. Hell, even the street vendors have knives and propane tanks. The real gold mine? Restaurant supply stores and the massive food distribution centers in the outer boroughs. These places have industrial-sized portions of non-perishables that could keep you alive for months. But here's where things get ugly. Everyone else knows this too, and you're going to be competing with 8 million other desperate people for the same resources. The subway system is either going to be your salvation or your tomb, and honestly, it could go either way depending on how smart you play it. On one hand, you've got 472 stations connected by 665 miles of track. That's an entire underground city that most zombies are going to avoid. Because, let's face it, even infected humans probably retain some instinctual fear of dark, enclosed spaces. The subway tunnels could provide hidden movement throughout the city, access to utility infrastructure, and shelter from both zombies and other survivors. Some of the deeper stations, especially the ones that were built as bomb shelters during the Cold War, are practically fortresses. Plus, the subway system connects to steam tunnels, water mains, and electrical conduits. Basically, the entire circulatory system of the city. But here's the nightmare scenario. What happens when thousands of people have the same idea and flood into the tunnels? What happens when the power goes out and you're trapped in the pitch-black tunnels with potentially infected people? The subway could become a 665-mile-long tomb filled with zombies who can't get out. Here's something that works in your favor. New York is basically a series of islands, and zombies, even the smart ones, probably can't swim. Manhattan is surrounded by water, which means if you can control the bridges and tunnels, you can theoretically contain the outbreak, or at least slow it down. The Hudson River, East River, and New York Harbor create natural choke points. If the military or survivors can blow the bridges and seal the tunnels, Manhattan becomes an isolated zone. Sure, you're trapped, but so are the zombies. And at least you know they're not getting reinforcements from New Jersey or the Bronx. Plus, the waterways provide potential escape routes. There are thousands of boats in the various marinas, from small pleasure craft to larger vessels that could take you to safer areas. The Staten Island ferry alone could evacuate hundreds of people at once, assuming someone knows how to drive the damn thing. New Yorkers are tough as nails, and they've proven it time and again. 9/11, Hurricane Sandy, blackouts, blizzards. This city has survived everything thrown at it, and the people have a track record of pulling together when things get bad. That New York attitude that tourists complain about, that's actually a survival mechanism. The diversity of the population is also a huge advantage. You've got people from every corner of the world, speaking dozens of languages, with skills ranging from medical professionals to construction workers to former military. In a survival situation, that diversity becomes a massive resource pool. Plus, New Yorkers are used to living in close quarters and dealing with stress. They're not going to panic and make stupid decisions like suburban folks might. They know how to navigate crowds, how to find resources in a concrete jungle, and how to mind their own business when necessary. The NYPD is the largest police force in the country, with over 36,000 officers and enough firepower to outfit a small army. Add in the National Guard unit stationed in the area, and you've got a significant military presence that could potentially contain an outbreak in its early stages. The city also has extensive emergency response protocols developed after September 11th. The Office of Emergency Management has plans for everything from terrorist attacks to natural disasters. And while they probably don't have a specific zombie protocol, the infrastructure for coordinated response is already in place. But here's the reality check. All of that depends on the outbreak being contained quickly. If it spreads faster than the authorities can respond, all those cops and soldiers just become more zombies with better equipment. New York's infrastructure, while old and sometimes unreliable, is also incredibly robust in some ways. The city has multiple power grids, water systems, and communication networks with built-in redundancies. Some parts of the city could potentially maintain power and water, even if other areas go dark. The steam system that heats many Manhattan buildings runs underground and could provide warmth even if the electrical grid fails. The city's extensive tunnel system includes not just subways, but also water mains, gas lines, and utility tunnels that could provide hidden movement and access to resources. Plus, the sheer density of infrastructure means that even if 90% of it fails, the remaining 10% is still more than most cities have to begin with. Now, let's get real about what can actually kill you. Here's the nightmare that keeps me up at night. 8.4 million people in 300 square miles means you're looking at roughly 28,000 people per square mile. When the outbreak hits, even if only 10% of the population gets infected in the first wave, you're still dealing with 840,000 zombies. That's not a zombie outbreak, that's a zombie tsunami. The density means the infection spreads faster than wildfire. In a typical suburb, a zombie might encounter a few people per hour. In Manhattan during rush hour, a single zombie could potentially infect dozens of people in minutes. The math is terrifying. Exponential growth in a population that dense means the city could be completely overrun in less than 24 hours. And here's the kicker. Those aren't just random zombies wandering around. These are zombies who know the city, who remember where the good hiding spots are, who might retain enough muscle memory to navigate the subway system or climb fire escapes. You're not just dealing with mindless corpses, you're dealing with infected locals who have home field advantage. Remember those natural barriers I mentioned as an advantage? Well, they're also your biggest disadvantage. Manhattan is connected to the mainland by 21 bridges and 15 tunnels, and every single one of them is going to become a death trap within hours of the outbreak starting. Picture this. Millions of people trying to evacuate simultaneously, cars abandoned in gridlock, bridges packed with panicking crowds, and zombies spreading through the chaos like a virus through a computer network. Those bridges aren't escape routes anymore. They're 21 different ways to die horribly. And once the bridges are blocked or destroyed, you're trapped. That island geography that seemed so protective, now it's a prison. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to retreat to, no way to get reinforcements or supplies from the outside. You're stuck on a rock in the middle of the harbor with millions of zombies and dwindling resources. New York's infrastructure is held together with duct tape, prayers, and the sheer stubbornness of 8 million people who refuse to admit their city is falling apart. In a normal day, the subway breaks down, the power grid struggles, and the water system leaks like a sieve. Now imagine what happens when there's no one left to maintain it. The power grid will fail first, probably within 6 to 12 hours of the outbreak starting. Without power, you lose elevators, trapping people in high-rises, subway trains, stranding thousands underground, traffic lights, creating massive gridlock, and communication systems, cutting off coordination between survivors. Water pressure will drop next as pumping stations fail. Without water, you can't fight fires, can't maintain sanitation, and can't survive more than a few days. The gas lines will start leaking. creating explosion hazards throughout the city. The steam system will fail, leaving people to freeze during winter months. But here's the real nightmare, the sewage system. Without power to run the pumping stations, raw sewage will start backing up into the streets and buildings. Disease will spread faster than the zombie infection, and you'll be dealing with cholera, dysentery, and God knows what else on top of the Walking Dead. Sure, New York has a lot of resources, but it also has a lot of people competing for those resources. Even if 90% of the population is dead or zombified, that still leaves 840,000 survivors fighting over the same supplies. And these aren't going to be polite, orderly lines at the grocery store. The looting will start within hours, and it won't just be opportunistic criminals. Desperate parents trying to feed their kids, elderly people who can't physically compete for resources, groups of survivors who decide that might makes right. Everyone becomes a potential threat when resources are scarce. The real problem is that most of the city's food supply comes from outside. New York imports almost everything it consumes, and once those supply lines are cut, the city has maybe a week's worth of food for its normal population. With transportation networks down and the surrounding areas potentially overrun, resupply becomes impossible. Those skyscrapers I mentioned as advantages, they're also death traps waiting to happen. Most high-rise buildings in New York are designed to keep people in, not to let them escape quickly. Fire codes require stairwells, but they're narrow, easily blocked, and become choke points where a single zombie can trap dozens of people. Imagine being on the 40th floor when the outbreak hits. The elevators stop working, the stairwells fill with panicking people, and zombies start climbing up from below. You're trapped between the infected below and a 400-foot drop above. Even if you make it to the roof, then what? You're stuck on top of a building with no way down and no guarantee of rescue. And here's something most people don't think about: building systems. High-rises depend on complex HVAC systems, water pumps, and electrical systems that require constant maintenance. Without building engineers and maintenance crews, these systems will fail, leaving you without heat, water, or breathable air. New York weather is brutal even in the best of times, and during a zombie apocalypse, it becomes a death sentence. Winter temperatures regularly drop below freezing, and without reliable heating, hypothermia becomes a bigger threat than zombies. Summer isn't much better. Temperatures can hit the 90s with crushing humidity, and without air conditioning or reliable water supplies, heat stroke and dehydration become major concerns. The city's concrete and asphalt create heat islands that make temperatures even more extreme. But the real killer is hurricane season. New York gets hit by major storms regularly, and without functioning infrastructure, a hurricane during a zombie outbreak would be absolutely catastrophic. Flooding, power outages, structural damage, and the chaos of trying to survive both zombies and a natural disaster simultaneously. Here's what nobody talks about in zombie movies: the psychological toll of urban survival. New York is loud, crowded, and stressful on a good day. During a zombie apocalypse, the sensory overload would be overwhelming. The constant noise of zombies, sirens, screaming, and urban decay would drive people insane. The smell of death, sewage, and smoke would be inescapable. The visual horror of seeing your city, your home, turned into a hellscape would break even the strongest minds. Sleep deprivation, malnutrition, and constant stress would impair decision-making and increase the likelihood of fatal mistakes. Depression and suicidal ideation would become epidemic among survivors. Some people would simply give up and walk into zombie hordes rather than continue fighting. Here's the scenario that gives me nightmares: total urban gridlock. Every street clogged with abandoned cars, every building packed with zombies, every escape route blocked by debris or crowds of the undead. You're trapped in a concrete maze with no way out, surrounded by millions of zombies who know the territory better than you do. The city becomes a giant zombie hive, with infected humans moving through the subway tunnels, up through buildings, across rooftops, and through every possible pathway. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no hope of rescue because the outside world has written off New York as a total loss. You're not just fighting for survival anymore, you're fighting for your sanity in a city that's become a living hell. Alright, let's cut through the bullshit and give you the real numbers. Short-term survival, first 30 days, 4/10. Here's why it's not a complete zero. If you're smart, prepared, and incredibly lucky, you might make it through the initial chaos. The abundance of resources and potential safe houses give you a fighting chance in those first few weeks, but the population density, infrastructure collapse, and sheer number of zombies make survival extremely difficult. Long-term survival, 6+ months, 2 out of 10. This is where reality gets ugly. Without resupply from outside, without functioning infrastructure, and with millions of zombies learning to hunt more effectively, long-term survival in New York becomes nearly impossible. You're looking at a slow death by starvation, disease, or eventually being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The key advantages in New York City during a zombie apocalypse is abundant initial resources, vertical escape options, underground movement network, natural water barriers, diverse, resilient population. Key disadvantages with this is extreme population density equals zombie tsunami. Island geography equals no escape. Infrastructure collapse within days. Resource competition among survivors. Weather and seasonal challenges. Psychological breakdown from urban hell. Timeline expectations. Days 1 through 7. Chaos and initial die-off. Some survivors establish safe zones. Weeks 2 to 4. Resource scavenging, group formation, infrastructure failure. Months 2 to 6. Starvation sets in, zombie hordes consolidate. Survivor groups collapse. 6+ months. City becomes uninhabitable wasteland. My advice? If you're in New York when the outbreak hits, your best bet is to get the hell out within the first 48 hours. Head north to the Adirondacks, west to Pennsylvania, anywhere with lower population density and sustainable resources. The city might seem like it has everything you need, but it's a beautiful trap that will kill you slowly. If you can't escape, focus on getting to the highest, most defensible position you can find, stockpile resources for a siege mentality, and pray that someone, somewhere, figures out how to stop the outbreak before you run out of food. New York City during a zombie apocalypse isn't a survival scenario. It's a countdown timer to your inevitable death. The only question is whether you die quickly or slowly. So what do you think? Am I being too harsh on New York City? Or did I miss some crucial survival advantage that could change these ratings? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take on surviving the zombie apocalypse in America's most intense city. And if this analysis helped you plan your own hypothetical survival strategy, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most challenging survival scenarios. Trust me, we're just getting started with the nightmare fuel.